Starting a bulletin with Canada, where hundreds of truckers staged a second day of anti-vaccine protest, blocking the streets of central Ottawa. The demonstration was part of a self-titled Freedom Convoy to protest vaccine mandates required to cross the US border. Trucks remained parked on the streets near Parliament, and some truckers said they would not leave until the mandate was overturned. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his family has been taken to an undisclosed location to avoid any attack on them. The Prime Minister's office updated Trudeau's itinerary to say he was somewhere in the National Capital Region. Nearly 4,000 people staged a protest against Germany's COVID restrictions on Sunday. The protesters, mostly unmasked, rallied in Nuremberg as the country continues to report record COVID infection figures. The demonstration came 4 days after German lawmakers agonized over whether to impose compulsory COVID-19 shots as cases continue to spike. Chancellor Olaf Scholz has backed mandatory vaccines for those over 18 years of age, but his coalition government is divided on the issue. The Chancellor has told lawmakers to vote according to conscience. One of the placards seen in the rally read that the health minister and epidemiologist himself is worse than corona, while another said that I am not a guinea pig for the pharmaceuticals industry. Russia continues to witness record surge in cases with over 121,000 cases reported in the last 24 hours.
Naše nejmenší, ještě ty nenarozené. Pryč s nimi!
Thousands of Czech protested against the government's COVID-19 restrictions on Sunday as the country continues to see new record numbers of cases driven by the more contagious Omicron variant. The crowd, estimated by police at around 3,000, filled the upper part of Wenceslas Square in central Prague, carrying Czech flags and chanting anti-government slogans. Despite the soaring numbers, the government scrapped a decree last week that made vaccinations mandatory for key professionals and the elderly population. However, proof of vaccination or a negative test is required for access to venues such as restaurants and clubs. Russia continues to witness record surge in cases with over 121,000 cases reported in the last 24 hours. This as an 8-fold increase compared to the figures which were reported in the beginning of the month. This comes as the highly contagious Omicron variant continues to spread through the country. The country's infection numbers have rocketed since early January, when only about 15,000 new cases per day were tallied. Another 668 people died of COVID-19 in the past day, bringing Russia's total fatality count for the pandemic to over 330,000, by far the largest in Europe. Dozens of Ukrainians living in the US gathered in Philadelphia on Sunday to show support for their homeland. In front of the city's art museum, demonstrators held US and Ukrainian flags and chanted slogans including in support of Ukraine. Russia's massing of an estimated 100,000 troops near the border with Ukraine has brought increasingly strong warning from the West that Moscow intends to invade. Russia is demanding that NATO promise never to allow Ukraine to join the alliance and to stop the deployment of NATO weapons near Russian borders. Hundreds of pro-democracy protesters took to the streets in Sudan on Sunday against the military takeover that took place last year. The protesters chanted slogans as they marched through the capital Khartoum. Pro-democracy activists have upped calls to restore a transition to civilian rule since the October 25th military takeover led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan ahead of the protests. The security forces sealed off roads leading to the presidential palace, while the Sudanese authorities warned people against heading towards the capital city. Despite the warnings, demonstrators converged in large numbers and headed towards the palace, where the police reportedly fired tear gas on them. Thousands of protesters in northern Chile demonstrated on Sunday against immigration and demanded more security in this city. The protest took place in the city of Iquique, just over 1,000 miles north of the capital Santiago. According to police officials, over 4,000 people took to the streets to take part in the protest march. Protests turned violent after a group of demonstrators stormed inside the beachside migrant tents and destroyed them. In recent years, Iquique has been overwhelmed by the mass arrival of migrants through the desert border with Bolivia, where hundreds of people pass through daily without any checks. The United Arab Emirates has now said that it has destroyed a ballistic missile launch site in Al Jawaf province in Yemen after a missile targeting the UAE was reportedly shot down. The country's defense ministry released videos showing the targeted attack on the Yemeni site. The UAE intercepted a ballistic missile fired by Yemen's Houthi rebels as the Israeli president visited the country. According to UAE authorities, it was the third such attack in recent weeks. Nine people died after a speeding muscle car ran a red light in North Las Vegas, according to authorities. The six-vehicle crash happened when a speeding motorist in a Dodge Challenger ran the red light on Saturday afternoon. The driver of the Dodge Challenger was among the dead. Investigators say that in total 15 people were involved in the incident, with one still in a critical condition in hospital. The victims of the crash range in age from young juveniles to middle-aged adults. Hundreds of people gathered in Northern Ireland on Sunday to mark 50 years since the Bloody Sunday, also known as the Troubles. On the 30th of January 1972, 13 people were killed and 15 others wounded when British soldiers fired on civil rights protesters in the city of Londonderry. Relatives of those killed and injured half a century ago took part in a remembrance walk on Sunday, where they retracted the steps of the original march. Irish political leaders were present at the Bloody Sunday Memorial, including Irish Premier Michael Martin laid wreaths in a ceremony.
My brother Michael was one who was murdered here 50 years ago. Reverend Latimer, Reverend Jennings, and Dr. Samuel.
China is following a strict COVID-19 protocol just days before the Winter Games begin on the 4th of February. Around 60 competitors, along with journalists and the Chinese workforce, have been kept in a closed loop. They have been cut off from the general public in order to avoid possible infections. People in the closed loop are tested for COVID-19 every day. Meanwhile, the area containing the Olympic venues and media center in Beijing has been sealed off using wired fences. The only way people can reach the venue is by shuttle or an approved taxi. Fireworks lit up Beijing's night sky on Sunday as part of rehearsals for the upcoming Winter Games. Light snow fell on the illuminated National Stadium, also known as the Bird's Nest, as the rehearsals got underway. The Beijing's Olympics will begin from the 4th of February, and Chinese President Xi Jinping is scheduled to attend the opening ceremony. Foreign leaders, including Vladimir Putin, are also expected to fly in for the start of the Games. The US, Canada, Britain and Australia are not sending government officials to mark the Games, but athletes from these countries will participate. After a one-year hiatus due to COVID-19 pandemic restrictions, the large Chinese community living in Buenos Aires and local residents gathered on Sunday to celebrate the Chinese New Year 2 days in advance. The traditional dance of dragons and lions appeared among the attendees who hurried to touch them, a gesture considered good luck for the year ahead. February 1st marks the beginning of the lunar year, the year of the tiger. The year of the tiger and the 12-year Chinese astrological cycle starts from today midnight, waving farewell to the year of the ox. People in Vietnam have started preparing for the Lunar New Year of the Tiger as the government urges people to exercise caution against Covid-19. In the old quarter of Hanoi, shoppers headed to the traditional market to look for decorations and flowers for the festival, which is called Tet in Vietnam. The market is opened about a month prior to Tet, which falls on February 1st this year. Now, during this period, the streets and the markets are lined with shops selling decorations in red and golden, the colors of good luck and prosperity. There are, however, less visitors than normal this year as authorities have issued a warning against large gatherings and asked people to practice various safety measures. Hundreds of people rallied in Serbia in attempts to draw attention to the country's high air pollution and demand that authorities take action to improve air quality. The protest in central Belgrade was the latest in a series of gatherings organized by the increasingly visible environmental movement in the Balkan country. Serbia, like much of the Western Balkans, is facing multiple environmental problems following decades of neglect. The problems include poor waste management, low air quality and polluted rivers. Gusty winds and falling temperatures plunged the east coast into a deep freeze as people began to dig out from a powerful nor'easter that dumped mounds of snow, flooded coastlines and knocked power out. Dangerous wind chills fell to below zero in many locations across the region after the storm dumped snow from Virginia to Maine. Philadelphia and New York had plenty of snow, but the worst affected with the towns of Sharon and Staunton getting more than 2 to 1.5 feet of snow before the storm moved out.